What are you seeing about masculinity?
To be honest with you, I'm not seeing much,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing the definition be changed or skewed by a lot.
Hey, it's Harry
And Carson,
with the Pillars podcast.
real talk for real growth.
Let's dive in. So how you doing, Carson?
Pleasure to be back here, Harry. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. My right hand, being here with right hand to be able to have these discussions
Yeah.
on helping young men to become real men. Today we're going to talk about this whole idea of what the world, what the society says and how it shapes masculinity. We have a need to really make something really clear about that, right?
This is key because, like, if you look at social media today, kids are what they see, and that's why you see what you see in the younger generation because of what's in front of them.
What are you seeing about masculinity?
To be honest with you, I'm not seeing much, and I'm seeing the definition be changed or skewed by a lot.
What would you just, if you were to say, here's kind of what I'm seeing, hearing, watching about?
I don't see any. I see a lot of false sense of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no like bold there's no in the face of opposition.
Yeah.
Strength.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no pillar that you see.
Yeah. There seems to be a sense of
no pun intended.
Yeah, we need pillars for sure. There just seems to be more passivity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think society has really much skewed it.
Mm-hmm.
We can see that, and we hear this term of toxic masculinity now. Oh, I hear that word, I just go, okay, yeah, there are elements of that. Let's say, but again, that's just because there's been a false definition of what masculinity is.
Yeah.
And so we can take it to the extremes. Masculinity, like we talked before, it has an element of being having the necessity to be a gentle lover.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be a man, masculine leader, you want to be gentle.
Yeah.
And you want to be kind and compassionate. But also a leader or a masculinity doesn't necessarily mean big muscles, deep, strong, fearful voice.
Yeah, big beard.
Yeah, doesn't mean anything like that. There can be some masculine men who have that.
Yeah.
But there also is a reflection of a masculine man who is gentle and kind and brings a sense of strength just simply by being gentle.
That meekness.
Yes, that meekness. So you know what they say what meekness is?
It's like that tame strength.
Yes, the tame strength. It's
you don't want
control.
And you don't want to see that come out of a real masculine man.
Yeah. But when it does come out, the hope is that it comes out under the right conditions.
Right.
It's, it's like a lion that you have in a cage just to protect someone, but you don't want to let a lion out in the middle of Central Park.
Right.
You don't want him to come out there.
You sure?
You want you might want to get in a truck and go on a safari and watch him and see him and let him be a lion in that way, but you don't want to put him in the wrong environment.
So what kind of, for the kids that are coming up, seeing these masculine figures in front of them, how does that affect them, and what is the weight of that effect?
Well, suppose it's someone who doesn't seem like or appear that they have that bent to them, and they see that and they assume that has to be masculinity.
Yeah.
And they realize that's not who they are. That's not them. Then society can very easily tell them, then, well, you must be something else. You must be gay then, if you're not. I've seen many dads who have, like you talked to one time before, if they want their son to play baseball and play football and do all these things, but that's not their son.
Yeah.
And because a young man still needs to be received and accepted and loved, and the father doesn't make that bond and doesn't build him up and discover who he is in a way that, I want you to express yourself, because you're still a man.
Yeah.
You're still a young man. You're going to develop into a man. Express yourself. Tell me, let me understand and learn more about you. A dad does that. He can enrich his son's life and discover things that a real man can do that doesn't look like the image that he's seen on social media. And if that can take place, that's a richness. But I've seen other dads who have broken that relationship and has demoralized the young man. And that young man only gets acceptance in places that say, well, you must be sweet, you got a little sugar in your pocket, and so hang out with us. And they learn something that's totally different, and that is teaching them a different identity than who they really are. Mm-hmm. And that could make a big difference. I know our society says, hey, it's okay to be gay, but if we're looking at God's word, that's not what he says, to live that way. And yes, do people have feelings and things like that? Yes, they will have those. We still love and accept, but we want to direct them in the way that's actually going to be right and best for them.
Right.
And when you're embraced by love, and you're embraced by someone who wants to hear you and know you and love you, you're going to explore more about yourself and feel more confident about yourself, and it's 100%. Going to be much better.
I mean, you say that, and I'm thinking of memories that I've had of the men in my life who raised me.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like, my grandpa would nurture and love and teach and be curious.
Yeah.
And
big word.
my mom and my dad. And it really taught me, like, I wasn't condemned for liking what I liked, or I was supported.
Yeah. That's amazing. This young one,
it's a blessing.
Young man that I get to hang out with, and the world tells him one thing, and he is very gentle, very artistic, very loving. And my concern is that he's hearing the messages in ways that are conforming him to something that accepts him to a way, like we said, just with our identity, who we are.
Yeah.
We could be told, oh, we got to be like this to fit in this space. And if you're being accepted by a group and you feel like they're going to accept you in this space, if you felt ostracized in some real significant ways, all you're doing is looking for acceptance somewhere.
Yeah.
And then when you combine that with a sexual expression that is satisfying, you're creating a huge dynamic of connection that is very difficult to reinterpret, to readjust in that way, because I get satisfaction.
Yeah.
And we're humans.
I love the way you broke that down.
And it makes a big difference. And so my goal is to embrace him for who he is. I even encourage him to say, I want you to act how you feel most comfortable around me, so that he can know that he can be effeminate if that's what he is, and know that I still accept and receive him,
right,
and believe he is still the man that he can be, even if that's who he is. And he doesn't have to pretend to be something else or feel like he has to be something else. That's a very significant a desire for individuals to be accepted, to be who they are, and still recognize I could still be a man in this way and not be confused by the world that says, no, if you're like that, then that means you must be this way.
Hey, we're glad you joined us today.
If you're resonating with the conversation, hit subscribe and stay in the loop.
Got a question or a topic you'd like us to explore? Drop it in the comments. We're listening.
And remember, the Pillars podcast is not just about talking. It's about taking action.
Check the link for more. And if you think about that too, a lot of young men that are raised up in the ways that are not masculine, real masculinity, they don't have that figure or those doctrines in their life, they always end up having severe mental issues.
Yeah. Mental issues come from a deregulation in who we believe we are, what we think in our head, and what we feel here in our bodies, and we don't feel the connection. Like something's off with me.
Yeah.
And then if you don't fit in a community, then it even validates that even more. There's this dysregulation.
Yeah.
So we want to help young men, people in general, to be able to come to health by regulating what they think, what they feel, and what they do in life. And for young men, if we can broaden the definition of what masculinity looks like, they don't have to feel outside. They can say, yeah, I like this flair.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy that flair. Be who you are in that way. I mean, I won't say, but I've done a lot of things I normally don't do, just to make him feel comfortable. Where if we go do something and he wants to go somewhere and see something, I'll just like, okay, not necessarily my bag of tricks, but this is what you like. I'll enjoy this with you.
Yeah.
So it's if we're willing to broaden this whole definition and help people to understand, especially young men who are struggling, to understand there's a breadth of what it means to be a man, but at the foundation of what we always talk about. I want to see that you're going to be responsible. I want to see that you're going to not be a passive person and let things happen. You still have a responsibility to care for people and to take care of people. I want to see you lead with courage. You know, in your life, I want you to be a courageous man. I want to help instill courage. In your life, I want you to be prepared and willing to accept what's a greater reward and not a lesser reward. So you're going to probably have to sacrifice things. You'll probably have to do things you don't necessarily feel comfortable with doing now in order to get a greater reward. And I constantly always want young men to recognize we have a God to serve.
Yeah.
We have to submit ourselves to his call and his purpose. Because if we don't do that, we go and make our own rules.
Mm-hmm.
And we make our own rules that feel good for us. And they could be very harmful if God says, you go that way, it's not going to be good for you.
I think they always end up harmful, our own rules.
Yes.
100% of the time.
I like to make up my own rules until I find out that they don't work. No, I got to do something totally different now.
I was going to ask you, with social media and raising your children, do you think the way that you raise them or young men can protect them from what they see, from what they consume? Because
that's a good question.
Regardless, they're going to consume in this day and age.
Yeah. So the important thing is to help our young men to discern good from bad, right from wrong. And we can't protect them from everything. And the only way that we can help them is give them guide rails. And they're gonna bump their heads like we all have. We bump our heads in certain things in certain ways. And then when we bump our heads, we have to then analyze good or bad. Am I willing to do that? And sometimes we bump our heads because of this unhealthy dysregulation, this in our minds and feelings, is that we might still bump our heads on this thing because we feel, I need that satisfaction. And sometimes that gives a sense of something is happening. And I'm going to keep heading in that direction. Maybe there's that community that is over there that saying, oh, this is where you belong. But maybe it's the hurt in their life that says, I have nowhere else to go. Yeah. Where else would I go? And we want to be able to help them to understand there is a way to go. There is a right way, and there's a right way to go. And there's a place for help and support and community in that way. Yeah. My heart goes out to young men who just are being misled. Mm-hmm. And that being misled and going where they say the answer is, the disappointing thing is that they're going to go and discover that's not the answer. Yeah. Especially if what's sad is if they go so far and so long and do some things that are so drastic. Yeah. And they find out it's still not
satisfying.
satisfying.
Yeah.
God's ways are always right. And I always tell my kids that. God's ways are always right.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we might not think and we don't see it, his ways are always right.
And it's interesting. You try everything, but God is the last thing you try.
Mm.
And then you realize, like you said, his way is always right.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I was telling you the other day, when I was in college, I kind of wanted to do my own thing. I knew God was who he was.
Mm-hmm.
But if I walk in the flesh, my flesh still goes, I want to do what I wanted to do. And God was so faithful to me, that within that time frame, he was able to change my heart, create circumstances for me that put me in the situation that I had to listen to him. I had to call out to him, hear his voice,
Mm-hmm.
and make a change. And I was confronted with, am I going to make this change or not?
Yeah.
And because I was his, and I know, it's like when your dad, you go play and you go out of bounds where he doesn't want you, and then he says, Carson, and that voice is like, get back here, get back. And that's
that
kind of how I
head
felt
turning.
that. Yeah. It's like, okay, he's calling me, and if I don't get back, I'm definitely going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I came back. And it's like, okay, and once you come back, he calls you, and you come back because he knows there's danger over there. It's like, oh, I'm okay. I'm good now. But man, I want to help young men to hear his voice.
Yeah.
And if you hear his voice and you discern right and wrong, you can kind of walk in the way that he's called you to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's made you a man, he wants you to be a man. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't want you to be a man that fits this cookie cutter of a man that the world says, well, that's what a man looks like.
He wants you to be the man that he called you to be.
He called you to be. Yeah. And it's a broad spectrum of what that looks like, So, man, if we can really help young men in that space, I think it'd be a benefit.
Yeah, just encourage them.
Yeah. Well, I love being able to enrich men's life and give them something worthwhile.
Yeah.
So fruitful unto you. Yeah. So we'll talk more next time.
Great.